Okay, good morning. Okay, I will back to another video. Okay, in this video, we to talk about the chapter number two, this desire. The from the book, the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Okay, the starting point of all achievements is desire. Okay, whatever you do, first come thing is desire the first step towards reach. When Edwin C. Barnes climbed down from the freight train in Orange, NJ, more than 30 years ago, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thoughts were those of a king. As he made his way from the railroad tracks to Thomas A. Edison's office, his mind was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself asking Mr. Edison for an opportunity to carry out uh, the one consuming obsession of his life, a burning desire to become the business associate of the great inventor. Barnes' desire was not a hope, it was not a wish, it was a keen, pulsating desire which transcended everything else. It was definite. The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Barnes' dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been probably was only a wish, but it was no mere wish when he appeared before Edison with it. A few years later, Edwin C. Barnes again stood before Edison in the same office where he first met the inventor. This time, this desire had been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominating dreams of his life had become a reality. Today, people who know Barnes envy him because of the break life yielded him. They see him in the days of his triumph without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success. Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal, placed all his energy, all his willpower, all his effort, everything back of that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most menial work as long as it provided an opportunity to take even one step toward his cherished goal. 5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made its appearance. During all those years, not one ray of hope, not one promise of attainment of his desire had been held out to him. To everyone except himself, he appeared only another cog in Edison's business wheel, but in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day that he first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of the power of a definite desire. Barnes on his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain that purpose, but he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became the dominating obsession of his life. And finally, effect to effect. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, I will try to introduce Edison to give me a job of some sort. He said, I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have come to go into business with him. He did not say, I will work there for a few months, and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else. He did say, I will start anywhere, I will do anything. Edison tells me to do, but before I am through, I will be his associate. He did not say, I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity. In case I fail to get what I want in Edison organization, he said, there is but one thing in this world that I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Thomas A. Edison. I have, and that is a business association with Thomas A. Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stack my entire future on my ability to get what I want. He left himself on possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. Okay, that is all there is to Barnes' story of success. A long while ago, a great warrior faced a situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his armies against a powerful force whose men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldiers into boats, sailed to the enemy's country, unloaded soldiers and equipment, then gave the order to burn the ships that had carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, you see the boats going up in smoke. That means that we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish. They own. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by so doing can one be sure of maintaining that state of mind known as a burning desire to win or essential to success. The morning after the Great Chicago Fire, a group of merchants stood on State Street looking at the smoking remains of what had been their stores. They went into a conference to decide if they would try to rebuild or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising section of the country. They reached a decision, all except one to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild pointed a finger at the remains of his store and said, gentlemen, on that very spot I will build the world's greatest store, no matter how many times it may burn down. That was the more than 50 years ago. The store was built. It stands for there today, the towering monument to the power, that state of mind known as burning desire. The easy thing for Marshall Field to have done would have been exactly what his fellow merchants did when the going was hard and the future looked dismal. They pulled off and went where the going seemed easier. Mark well this difference between Marshall Field and the other merchants because it is the same difference which distinguishes Edwin C. Barnes from thousands of other young men who have worked in the Edison organization. It is the same difference which distinguishes practically all who succeed in from those who fail. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring riches, but Desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite way and mean to acquire riches, and backing those plans with a persistence which does not recognize failure will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of six definite practical steps. First is fix your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as the amount. There is a psychological reason for definiteness, which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not to put this plan into action. Write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give it return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Read your written statements aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night, once after rising in the morning. As you read and see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of money, it is important that you follow the instructions described in the these six steps. It is especially important that you observe and follow the instruction in the sixth paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible to for you to see yourself in possession of money before you actually have it. Here is where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want money and to become so determined to have it that you convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. To the uninitiated who has not been schooled in the working principles of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all those fail to recognize the soundness of the six steps, to know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in the steel mills, but managed, despite his humble beginning, to make these principles yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be a further help to know that the six steps here recommended were carefully uh, scrutinized scrutinized by the late Thomas A. Edison, who placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the steps essential for accumulation of money but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal. The steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. They do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous. To apply them calls for no great amount of education, but the successful application of these six steps Those call for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortunes first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning before they acquired money. Okay? Okay. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white weight of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. You may as well know also that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. Christianity is the greatest potential power in the world today because its founder was an intense dreamer who had the vision and an imagination to see realities in their mental and spiritual form before they had been transmuted into physical form. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never. In the history of America has there been so great an opportunity for practical remorse as now exists. The 6 year economic collapse has reduced all men substantially to the same level. A new race is about to be run. The stakes represent huge fortunes which will be accumulated within the next 10 years. The rules of the race have changed because we now live a changed world that definitely favors the masses, those who had but little or no opportunity to win under the conditions existing during the Depression when fear paralyzed growth and development. We are the we are in this race for riches should be encouraged to know that this changed world in which we live is demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, and new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new features for the radio, new ideas for moving pictures. Back of all this demand for new or better things, there is one quality which one must possesses to win, and that is definiteness of purpose. The knowledge of what one wants and burning desire to possess it. The business depression marked the death of one age and the birth of another. This changed the world requires practical dreamers who can and will put their dreams into actions. The practical dreamers have always been and always will be the pattern makers of civilization. Who- We who desire to accumulate riches should remember the real leaders of the world always have been men who harnessed and put into practical use the intangible unseen forces of unborn opportunity and have converted those forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, aeroplanes, automobiles, and every form of conveyance that makes life more pleasant. Tolerance and an open mind are practical necessities of the dreamer of today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has there been a time more favorable to pioneers than the present. The true, there is no wild and woolly west to be conquered, as in the days of the covered wagon, but there is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remodeled and redirected along new, better lines. In planning to acquire your share riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past whose dreams have given to civilization all that it has of value. The spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mine to develop and market our talents. Let us not forget that Columbus dreamed of an unknown world, staked his life on the existence of such a world, and discovered it. Copernicus, the great astronomer, dreamed of a multiplicity of worlds after and revealed them. No one denounced him as impractical after he had triumphed. Instead, the world worshipped at his shrine, thus proving once more that success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis. If you think, if the thing you wish to do is right and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dreams across and never mind what they say if you meet with temporary defeat, for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Henry Ford, a poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with what tools he purchased without waiting for opportunity to favor him, and now evidence of his dream builds the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived because he was not afraid to beg his dreams. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dream into action, and despite more than 10,000 failure, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quite. Will on dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, has transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy the best corners in America. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slaves, put his dream into action, and barely missed living to see a united North and South translate his dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now, one may see evidence all over the world that they dreamed soundly. Wright brothers. Marconi dreamed of a system for harnessing intangible forces of the ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every wireless and radio in the world. Moreover, Marconi's dream brought the humblest cabin and the most stately manor house side by side. It made the people of every nation on earth backdoor neighbors. It gave the President of the United States a medium by which he may talk to all the people of America at one time, and on short notice, it may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had him taken into custody and examined in a psychopathic hospital when he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without aid of wire or other direct physical means of communication. The dreamers of today are far better. The world has become accustomed to new discoveries. Nay, it has shown a willingness to reward the dreamer who gives the world a new idea. The greatest achievement was at first and for a time but a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of the soul, a waking angel's tears. Dreams are the seedlings of the reality. Awake, arise, and assert yourself, you dreamers of the world. Your star is now in the ascendancy. The world depression brought the opportunity you have been waiting for. It taught people humility, tolerance, and open mindedness. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take up. Dreams are not born of indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. The world no longer scoffs at the dreamers nor calls him impractical. If you think it does, take a trip to Tennessee and witness what a dreamer president has done in the way of harnessing and using the great water power of America. A score of years ago, such a dream would have seemed like madness. You have been disappointed. You have undergone defeat during the depression. You have felt the greater heart within you, crushed until it bled. Take a courage, for these experiences have tempered the spiritual metal of which you are made. They are assets of incomparable value. Remember, too, that all who succeed in life get up to a bad start and pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of the some crisis through which they introduce to their other slaves. John Bunyan wrote the Pilgrim's Progress, which is among the finest of all English literature, after he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his views on the subject of religion. Oh, Henry discovered the genius which slept within his brain after he had met with great misfortune and was confined in a prison cell in Columbus, Ohio, being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self and to use his imagination, he discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Strange and varied are the ways of life, and stranger still are the ways of infinite intelligence, through which men are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains and their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest inventor and scientist, was a tramp telegraph operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven finally to the discovery of the genius which slept within his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on blacking pots. The tragedy of his first love penetrated the depths of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. The tragedy produced first David Copperfield, then a succession of other works that made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Disappointment over love appears generally has the effect of a driving men to drink and women to ruin, and this because most people never learn the art of transmuting their strongest emotions into dreams of the constructive nature. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb, and blind shortly after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she has written her name indelibly in the page of the history of the great. Her entire life has served as the evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Okay, Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be drunkard in the bargain. The world was made better for his having lived because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry and thereby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times, on all subjects, and was a dreamer. He left his impress for good on an entire race. Be- Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last as long as time endures because they dreamed and translated their dreams into organized thought. Before passing to the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all, all else that all else that you need will come to you when you are ready for it. Let Emerson state the thought in these words: every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to the thee for aid and comfort shall surely come home through open and winding passages. Every every friend whom not thy fantastic will, but the great and tender soul in thee craveth, shall lock thee in his embrace. There is a difference between wishing for a thing or being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith and courage and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life or to demand abundance and prosperity than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated this universal truth through these lines. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have said the wages where you must bear the task, I worked for a menial bear hire, only to learn dismay that any ways I had asked of life would have willingly paid. Desire outweighs Mother Nature. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw his 24 years ago, a few minutes after he was born. He came into the world without any physical sign of years, and the door admitted when pressed for an opinion that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and rendered an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently in the secrecy of my own heart. I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a child without ears, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I know I would find it. I thought of words of immortal immersion. The whole course of things goes to teach us faith. We need only obey. There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. The right word, desire more than anything else. I desired that my son should not be a deep mute. From that desire, I never receded, not for a second. Okay.